Welcome back to another segment of Behind the Scenes of the Waltons. Today, I'm being joined by Jon Walmsley, who is going to share with you about his 2 upcoming concerts in the Nashville area, and also more about his wonderful music career. So please welcome Jon. Welcome, and so great to have my morning with you and your evening with us.
Thank you. It's great to see you.
Thank you.
Can't wait to see you in Pigeon Forge. That's coming up.
Yes, that's going to be
exciting, isn't it?
Yeah, a bunch of us are going to be there. And I feel badly because this is for all of the viewers who are watching this. It sold out so fast that I've just sadly had a lot of people say, "Oh, I really wanted to come," and by the time I checked, it was sold out. I'm happy for the organizer because it's a new organizer that has not put together an event for us. So I'm hopeful that because it was successful that he will choose to do more, which means more of you might have an opportunity to see us someplace.
Yeah. I agree with all of that. And I think it'll be great. I do feel bad for the people that missed out on that. But, and this is part of the reason I'm here, the good news is I have a couple of appearances the following weekend.
Yay!
Yeah. So I have 2 concerts coming up. A full-length concert in Franklin, Tennessee at the Franklin Theater on the 22nd of May. And then the next day, Saturday night, the 23rd, I'll be appearing just 2 songs, as they do, on the Grand Ole Opry. Mm. So really looking forward to both of those. As I say, the first one, Franklin, will be a full-length concert with band. The Opry I'll be playing with the house band, as most people do. And, just 2 songs, and then, if they don't pull the hook first.
Can't imagine that happening. I'm sure they're excited to have you back after.
Well, that is the amazing thing, because one of my biggest early live appearances was on the Opry at 19. This was 1975. And this was when the Waltons was just at the height of its success. And Maeve Nutter, who played Bobby Bigelow, and I went on together and sang. And it was absolutely wonderful. Mm. Just great. So now, here I am again, 51 years later at 70, making my return to the Opry. So I'm thinking if it goes really well, maybe they'll have me back in another 51 years.
I'll be there. May we both be there.
Yes.
Well, that's very cool. And of course, we're going to put, for those, take a look at what's on the screens for where to get tickets and all of that. And I'll also add that information in the comment section of this video. This will also be posted information on your website.
It will.
Okay.
And Facebook.
And Facebook. I wish I had known sooner, because
I do too.
Like, Jon's I would have loved to have come see you, do a concert.
The wonderful thing about having this extra weekend, in addition to being able to welcome more fans to those events, is that it really enabled me to go, because for those who don't know, my wife and I live in Cornwall in the UK. And it is a very long trip. Well, pretty much from here, anywhere. It takes sort of just 2 days to leave the country. We'll actually be flying from Cornwall to Ireland, and we'll spend the night there before we fly on to America. Mm. So it's kind of a big deal to get there. So with having at least 4 days travel involved, it sort of doesn't make sense to do something that's just a weekend, because you spend more time in the air than you do actually doing the event. But luckily, this worked out. So we've got a week in between, and to see friends and rehearse with the band, the gigs, and it'll be great.
Perfect.
I'm really excited about it.
You have a background in the Nashville area as well.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. It is like I've described it as a homecoming for me, because beginning with that appearance on the Opry at 19, I spent so much time there over the years. Still in the 70s, I began working with a producer there called Pete Drake, who is a legendary pedal steel player and also had his own studio. As a steel player, I mean, he was part of the A team of Nashville session musicians. He played on records like I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, Stand By Your Man, Bob Dylan's song Lay Lady Lay. Crazy. And he's all over George Harrison's first solo album, post Beatles. Incredible credentials as a player. And when I went into the studio with him, and this would be like maybe 78 at this point, we demoed 3 songs, and I was just blown away by how they worked, because they are still so fast. The players are so good. The engineers are just great. And they do it pretty much, at least then, live in the studio. Everybody played. I sang. The background singers were standing next to the control booth, and it all went down like one take all at once. And all they had to do was maybe adjust a couple of things, and it was finished, mixed and everything. That's how they used to make records there. And that's part of, for me, the charm of that music. Not only this, and I'm glad I didn't know this when I walked into the studio, but the other fellows on the session were Pig Robbins on piano, Buddy Harwood on drums, Bob Moore on bass, and Ray Edenton on rhythm acoustic guitar. Now, that may not mean a lot to some people, but they were the absolute cream of the crop Nashville session guys. They played on literally thousands of records, all those hit records like the old Patsy Cline stuff and Everly Brothers and, all these Elvis records, the early ones. They played on all that stuff. And those records, they sound magical. And when I went into Pete's studio in 78 and we started playing, I thought, oh my God, there's that sound. I'm sitting in the middle of the Nashville sound. Of course, the Nashville sound today is quite different because it's, 40 years later, things have modernized. There's other influences in country music. So, but the players are still great and the studios are great. And, there's still wonderful music being made.
Can you explain to people who don't know what the difference is between, like you spoke about session musicians, and I know that oftentimes the band that goes out and travels is not the same band that records. So can you explain what the difference is for people?
Right. Well, this is not just, doesn't happen just in Nashville, but this happened in New York, in LA. There were a group of musicians in LA, for example, that were playing on everybody's records. And, when you heard a Mamas and Papas record or a Beach Boys record or a Sonny and Cher record, it wasn't them playing. I mean, most of the time they were singing, but other musicians were playing. And the players that were doing those sessions joked, if the kids back in the 60s knew that the musicians they were listening to looked, they didn't look young and hip. They looked like their parents. It wouldn't have been cool, but they didn't know that. These people were all highly trained in LA, highly trained jazz musicians who could, sight read like crazy. And they would they would have 3 sessions a day, every day. And, there was a large group of musicians, as there was in Nashville as well. But the players sort of interchanged and interacted. So they were part of a larger group of players who all knew each other, all worked together all the time. So everything just went like clockwork. It was amazing.
So would that be to say that the some of the musicians, or how would you classify the guys who go out and play the tours? Like, how's that different?
That's interesting. A lot of times, an artist would hire younger, sometimes less experienced musicians to go on tour, because those musicians would have more time to learn the songs. They could listen to the record, they could copy what the session players had done. But part of the skill of the session guys was that they were able to come up with these parts and solos on the spot and nail it first time. Whereas the others were, talented, good singers, good players, but they might have to kind of woodshed a little bit and, oh, okay, I hear what he's doing. Yeah, okay, I've got it now, and they could perform it accurately on stage. But it's another thing to do it on the spot immediately in the studio, which is, what it's like when you're in a studio recording, that microphone is in front of you and the red light comes on. It's like performing under a microscope, because everyone can hear and see everything you do. And for a record, which, once the record is released, it never goes away. It's out there forever. So, if you play a bad note on a record, you have to live with it forever. This is why, what blows me away sometimes is listening to records. Like, I was listening to something that was a duet from the 30s with Ella Fitzgerald and Louis Armstrong. And the whole thing had to be done live because there was no such thing as overdubbing. It was in mono. There was only one track. And they balanced it by how far each instrument or singer was from a microphone. So, and they would, step up to the microphone when they had a solo, and then they would back off. Everything had to be perfect. And these recordings are so flawless. It's just unbelievable. Wow. But that was the level of the singing and the musicianship. As I say, in Nashville, certainly with Ella and Louis Armstrong, and in LA as well.
So would you say there were bands, like, take, for instance, you're in England, the Beatles. Did they play when they recorded? Did they actually play?
They did. There are very few instances where there were outside musicians playing with the Beatles. It happened a little bit, but it was always to supplement them, not to replace them. That's the difference. And when the Beatles first started recording, they were recording songs that they already knew and had been playing for a while. So I know that their first album had, I think, 14 songs on it, and they were all recorded in a day.
Wow.
Because they just played their stage act. They rolled the tape, they played their stage act, and it went on tape, and that was it. Wow. So over time, they began to take more time. For example, the Sgt. Pepper album, which was made after they stopped touring, took 4 months to make, which, by the way, is not the longest it's taken, certain albums to be made. Mm-hmm. Others have taken much longer than that. But at the time, the press was saying, "Oh, the Beatles are washed up. They've been in the studio for 4 months now, and they haven't come up with anything. So they're finished, And then they made this record, which is, one of the greatest albums of all time, and changed the whole course of music.
Well, that was also a case of one of the few bands where you knew who everybody, you knew all four of them. It wasn't one lead and some backup guys who were interchangeable, as happens more frequently.
Right. If anyone had been different, it wouldn't have been the same band. People think, oh, well, Ringo's just the drummer, but that's not the case. He's a very, very special drummer and very, very musical, and his contribution to that band is immeasurable. Yeah, as you can tell, I love to talk about this stuff because it's my life.
Well, switching to for our Walton fans here, of course, the character of Jason became a musician and you played throughout, and there were different bands. There was Bobby Bigelow's band, and
Right.
those musicians who played there, were they really playing or were they actor players, or what was the deal there?
As far as I can remember, all the bands that I played with on the show were real musicians. For example, Larry McNeely, the banjo player that we had with Bobby Bigelow, was playing with Glenn Campbell at the time. So it was that, and Larry is a virtuoso banjo player. I mean, he plays Beethoven's Fifth on the banjo. They were that level of players. And by the way, Larry was instrumental in me returning to Nashville and sort of hooking up with Pete Drake. And as I was going to say, I continued to go there over the years. In the 80s, I played there several times when I was a member of the Richard Marx Band. And I learned a tremendous amount from doing his tours, because we traveled all over the world. It was a big tour, and I learned a lot about the music business. And we played at a big outdoor gig on the Cumberland River, and we did another one at a big amphitheater outside town. In the 90s, I went back and got really involved again in the studios, but more as a songwriter, working with a number, like a who's who of Nashville songwriters. And that was a fabulous experience, which also eventually led to me getting some production jobs, producing a few CDs there, one of which was the Walton's Christmas album, the Waltons Together Again. I was so happy that we were able to put together a good project in the 90s that did feature all of us, and classic Christmas music as well as some original Christmas music. And I play a guitar all over it, and then we ended up doing the vocals, the cast vocals in LA at Dave Perlman's place, who was an old friend. Still in touch with him. So when I was doing all of this, I actually lived in Nashville for a bit, a neighborhood called Bellevue. Nice area. And when I was there, on the weekends and so on, and I'd hang out. And one place that I'd like to go a lot was Franklin, which is where
That's
I'm
cute.
going to be playing.
Yeah.
Have you been to Franklin?
I have, yeah.
It's lovely.
It's a
lovely.
charming little, just the main area I was in.
Yeah. It's like Mayberry.
Mm-hmm.
It's lovely. And when I went in the 90s, there was a cinema there, the Franklin Theater. It was opened in the 30s, but this was the 90s, and they'd only ever just shown films there. And I went there to see the Tom Hanks film, That Thing You Do, which I love. It's about a band, formation of a band in the early 60s. So, right up my alley. A great film. I just saw it again recently. And I came out of that theater in like 98, and I thought to myself, God, that would be a great place to do a show. I would love to play there. But they didn't do that then. Long story, bit longer. The theater closed at one point, and then they decided to reopen it, remodel it, made it really beautiful, and now it's a concert venue. So it's one of those weird things, and this has happened to me a few times in my life where I've had this thought, and then it actually comes about. It's a bit like when we were filming The Homecoming in Jackson Hole, and we were sitting there, waiting on the bus, sitting on the bus, trying to keep warm, waiting to do that scene where we crossed the snow in a single file on the way to the barn. I'm sitting on the bus, and I thought, this is a really good story. This could be a series. This could last for 6 years, right? I said that to somebody, and unfortunately, I was wrong.
Yeah.
Nobody ever heard of it again.
Yeah. Well, I can't help as I look at you to see this entire row of guitars behind you. And I'm always curious, do you what, you got 8, 10, 20, 100, whatever. Why do you end up with so many, and do you use them all?
Yes, I use them all. I don't use them all the time. And I'm not really a collector per se, as some people are. But for me, because I was playing sessions in the studio, I just needed to have an array of sounds. Somebody would say, okay, we need a Fender Telecaster sound for this song. Or they'd say, can you play like James Burton? Oh, well, that would be the Telecaster. Or they would say, can you give us like, Eric Clapton type solo? That would probably be a Fender Strat. So I would have that instrument. So I would pull. In fact, funny thing happened once, actually. I was doing a TV session at Capitol Records, the tall, round building in Hollywood. And this was I think it was for a Seventh Heaven, Stephen Collins show. And my friend, Dan Foley, was scoring it. We were doing this session, and an engineer popped his head in from the next room and said, Eric Clapton's next door, and we need to borrow an acoustic guitar. Is there a guitar we could borrow? And I said, yeah, Tom, I can loan you a guitar. So I brought it round on our break, and there was Eric Clapton sitting in the studio playing electric guitar. And they said, oh yeah, thanks. That's really great. We'll make sure you get it back. Okay, cool. I realized it wasn't the time for me to stay and hang around. So it ended up being used on on and on, you just keeps on singing. Da, 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 da. Stephen Bishop record. Stephen Bishop was doing a record of his hits played bossa nova style, and he and Eric Clapton are very good friends. So Eric Clapton ended up playing a solo on Stephen Bishop's record on my guitar. Wow. Yeah.
So did he sign it before he gave it back to you?
No, he didn't. He didn't. And by the time I went round to collect it, there was just the engineer, and I think the producer, who was because it was a bossa nova record, he was Brazilian, and he said, "Oh, thanks so much for this," and he said, "By the way, Eric really liked the guitar." And wouldn't you know, Stephen Bishop, the lovely guy that he is, actually gave me credit. Thanks on the album.
Wow.
It was lovely.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a sweet guy.
That's very nice. So did you cross paths with Eric Clapton later on? Or any point along the way?
I didn't. I did with Stephen Bishop because we actually played together. A band I had at one point, the UK Beat, backed him up on a gig where it was all British music.
Who were some of your favorite people to get to collaborate with or meet? Or
one of my favorites to play with, just a wonderful guy, great to be with, great fun, great stories, great singer, great musician, was Denny Laine, who was in the Moody Blues, and then a member of Paul McCartney and Wings the entire time. He was part of every lineup of Wings, beginning to end. And I had so much fun. He just had the loveliest stories, and he was just so much fun, so much fun to be around. But, there were a lot of great ones. I played actually with a lot of my heroes that I grew up listening to in the 60s, both British and American. It was Peter and Gordon, Chad and Jeremy, Joey Molland of Badfinger, Denny, of course, Spencer Davis, and also some American artists, Eric Johnson, Buddy Miles, Mason Williams, and another Brit, one of my favorite guitarists, Albert Lee, who was just fabulous. And Albert's he's still out there touring in his 80s. just killing it.
It's so cool.
So I feel like a youngster still at 70. The thing that excites me, and I know this is true for you as well, because I hear it and I see it, is that we are actually getting better.
Oh.
Which is, the thing that makes me want to keep doing it, because I feel that there's so much to learn. So I keep learning new things on my instrument all the time, and writing new songs and recording. I just did a session. I recorded a guitar solo for a CD that Linda Pearl is doing.
Ah.
And the song was written, I don't know if you know him, but it was written by Jimmy Dunn, who did a lot of music for Happy Days.
Okay.
So it was great. It's just so funny. And I know you've experienced this, because in entertainment, you meet people and you might not see them for years, but you do keep running into the same people. Mm-hmm. And this has happened with me. There's so many instances in my life now where things have come full circle. It's like me going back to the Opry now, 51 years later. It's like bookends on a story. And as well as me returning to the UK, I was born here and lived in the US, and now I've come back. And that's sort of like, I like stories that bookend. I think that's nice. And as I said, I don't often get to the US, which is why this visit, Pigeon Forge and these shows in Nashville are really such a special event. So I hope people will turn up, and hopefully, if they do, there'll be more in the future. Yeah.
Will there be an opportunity with either of those shows for people to say hello to you?
Yes, I think they don't do that at the Opry. The Opry, I know they have a gift shop there and they sell their own things, but at the Franklin Theater, there will be a meet and greet and autograph session after the show. So I'll be able to say hello to everyone.
Wonderful. So bring your
Really
Jon Walmsley CDs if you have them, and if you don't, you can get them through Jon's website, or I'm sure he'll have some available at the concert so that you can, after you've heard his wonderful show, you can purchase CDs and have him sign them in person, and you can take a picture of it so people know it was a for real Jon Walmsley signature.
It's true. I can still write my own name.
This is good. So the message of this little session here is get your tickets to see Jon in Nashville at the Franklin Theater or at the Grand Ole Opry. And you will not regret it, because if you haven't seen Jon live in person performing, then it's a treat that you don't want to miss.
Thank you.
Yes.
That was lovely.
Well, it's been lovely.
And thank you for having me on today.
Yes.
That was fun, as always.
It's been great having Jon join me and talking more about his years in the music industry and all the wonderful people he's had the opportunity to collaborate with, perform with, and also hope you are able to get tickets and go see him when he is in Nashville. I will see you next time for more behind the scenes of the Waltons and more Ask Judy. Thanks for watching.